Good morning. I'm going to make sure that I'm being recorded. Yeah, I'm unmuted. Just did that. We are a good Erev Shabbos, and just coming from the Lula, the Rebbe's father, and someone the Shev the Nechemta, the Yishalfim, which we say that Kitzur on the Sheikh Nelfa, this week, today's Rambam I'm going to deal with one topic of the Rambam, although it runs across a few halachas in the Perek, which is the meaning of Kovod Shabbos, although he talks about Kovod and Einik. Okay, so the Rambam begins Perek Lamed Halacha Aleph. Arba dvarim nemru b'Shabbos, shnayim min HaTorah, shnayim min Divrei Sefer. Two min HaTorah, two min Divrei Sefer, v'hem b'Farash Neidam Nevi'im, and he brings the pasuk. And the Nevi'im is v'karasa l'Shabbos Einig v'l'Kdeish Hashem Mechuba. So there's Einig and Kovod. So the logical thing would be, since the pasuk mentions Einig before Kovod, to discuss Einig and then Kovod. But we have learned already over the years that the Rambam does not necessarily follow what we would think is logical. What he decides what he thinks is logical. And based on his logic, it's not. Now, I want to note that the Shulchan Aruch has a different approach to it than the Rambam, as we will see a little later. But the Rambam's approach starts off right away, halacha beis, Eizehu Kovod. Now, when he makes a statement, Eizehu Kovod, he's going to follow with the answer. And he goes through and he answers that a person should wash himself, hands, feet, put on tzitzis and sit with a respectful manner to receive Shabbos, and just like he's going out to receive towards the king. And then he goes on that the early Chachamim would gather their students, go out and say, Boi v'nei tzilkas Shabbos HaMelech, by the way, which is a source from the Hagim. Many have a minig that Friday night, at some point in the Kabbalah Shabbos, they say, Boi v'nei tzilkas Shabbos Malkusa. It's an expression that as a child, I heard, I grew up with, that said, I think, before the Mizmar of the 18th Shem Havayas that we say before L'Chadodi. Anyway, and then he continues. Halacha Gimel, Kovod HaShabbos. Then he goes on, other things that are Kovod HaShabbos. So it sounds like he already set up Kovod HaShabbos, Ezu Kovod, now, and from the Inyanim of Kovod HaShabbos. He's giving a list. And he gives to dress up properly and to wash your clothing. And another thing is, he goes on, he's still talking about Kovod, not to make a Suda of Shabbos, so that Rabbi began me Kovod Shabbos, Sheyimna Odom, again, me Kovod Shabbos, part of Kovod Shabbos. And a person should refrain from eating Min Chalamayla, a Suda, so that you should go into Shabbos hungry. And then halacha hey, person should set up his table nicely and prepare his house. All mipnei Kovod HaShabbos. It should be a ner doluk, shulchan aruch, mitamutzas, a light, a candle, shulchan aruch. The beds should be made. All this shekalelu l'chvei Shabbos, and a lot of different l'sheinas, but Eizehu Kovod was one halacha, and then everything else they're all parts of Kovod Shabbos. Hey, you could have just said Eizehu Kovod and go through a whole list. No, it doesn't do that. Halacha Vav. Now, before we get to Halacha Vav, I'm not sure. We'll say before we get to halacha vav, there is an interesting halacha. Just set up your table, even if you eat very little. You don't eat much, but put a nice table. And then Shabbos. Who kommt da Mitzvah Shabbos? We haven't even begun the Shabbos yet. He hasn't spoken about Einik Shabbos. He hasn't spoken about anything about Shabbos as far as how to conduct yourself on Shabbos. This is really, to me, one of the biggest pillars. Why? Now, again, Shulchan Aruch does not do this. Neither the Alter Rebbe, neither the Mechaber. They have a very different organizational process here of how they organize the halachas. But this is like really, really interesting. Okay, we'll say, because this is part of Kovod Shabbos, but then he goes right back. Now, he's not done yet with Kovod Shabbos. Now I'm going to halacha vav, which is a very, very famous halacha. And here there's a lot of details, but we're not going to get into all of it. We're going to stay out of most of the stuff. I just want to bring it in so we understand the greatness of it. No matter how great you are, and it's not your manner to go into the street and do business and go buy stuff, or to be involved in cleaning your house and doing things. You should do these things that are tzarech HaShabbos, begufay shezehu kvoday. That's your cover, that's your honor, or that's the honor of Shabbos. Chamer Sheinem, he goes through a list of things that the Chacham used to do. They did different things. And he writes interesting. Mehen Mishayim Avashal, there were those who cooked in the kitchen. Oy Meleach Basar, or they would salt meat. Oy Goydel Psilais, they would fix the candles, they make the candles, or light the candles. And then there was those that went out in the street and bought food. And again, even though it wasn't fitting for him, and here the Rambam adds something very unique that doesn't say anywhere, I think, in the Pesach. The Mechaber doesn't bring anything out there. Kol hamarbe v'davar zeh harei zeh meshubach. Huh? He's what? Okay, good. Kol hamarbe v'davar zeh harei zeh meshubach. Whoever adds in this is meshubach. Halacha Zayin. That begins Eizahu Einig. What is Einig? Now, finished. I just want to take one note on a side note. It's not part of what I'm main point that we're making here, but it's just something to take note of. The Rambam says that there were those that salted meat. There's nowhere in the Gemara that says the Gemara brings Rava Malach Shivuta. Rava would salt shivuta. What's shivuta? Shivuta is generally considered fish. So I just making a note of it. I have an answer for it that I might have an answer for it, but I'm not going to get into it now because we are limited in time. And I want to focus on the main Indian, which is what the Indian of Kovod Shabbos is. But it is a very interesting point that the Rambam gets. Then where does he get that Yesh Me'amayim Avashal? It doesn't say anywhere. I think it's the answer. One can answer the other, but we'll come to that a little later. If I come to it, it'll be only because I have enough time. If not, I'm open to hear people's answers. Okay, now. If you go through the Alter Rebbe and the Mechaber and the Alter Rebbe, how they bring the halachas, so I'll give you a quick rundown. The Alter Rebbe Siman Reish Mem Beis, which is the beginning of Hilchos Shabbos. Remember, the Rambam brings all this at the end of Hilchos Shabbos. How did it start with Kovod Shabbos in the beginning? Beginning so about the malachas and everything else. At the end, suddenly, he starts with this. So he writes, it starts off with Hizar b'Kovod Shabbos. And then he brings a simulation from Tess, the heading Dinim HaShayochim LeErev Shabbos. Simulation Nun, the heading is Hachonas to the Shabbos. They're all separate things. And there he talks about doing your own work for it. Simresh Samach, he talks about the Achnosa Shabbos. He talks about washing your head in place later. In other words, look at the order. Washing comes later. Reish Samach Beis, there's the heading Kaddish HaShabbos to be Mekadesh Shabbos or Shulchan Aruch, Ksuz V'Kiyah. You see a whole different buildup of the halach. And there he brings how you're supposed to dress and be sameach, or be a Shabbos, ki yetzel akras hamelech. There he also mentions it. And then a siman shin, which is quite a distant away. He talks about the Malav Malka, and he writes Leila Misadar Adam Shulchan. Dalton Rebbe, Reish Rambams, he talks about the union of Einig and Kovod. But he first speaks about Einig. And then the only thing he writes but Shabbos. But he talks about buying stuff, but he doesn't write the way the Rambam about all the things. And then after he finishes Einig, he talks about Kovod. Reish from Tess then he goes on to similar things as the Mechaber. Obviously, he follows a similar pattern, and till he comes to Malav Malka and Simshin, same thing. Okay. The Rambam wrote about it being an Adam Choshuv b'Yosef. The Mechaber stresses something that the Rambam does not stress, is even if he has many avodim, shamshay, shtadl l'hochem ba'atzim. In other words, the Rambam doesn't mention that halacha. It doesn't stress the Adam Choshev part. The Rambam, as we said, mentions again at the end about buying stuff. The Rambam writes, then the organization, as we said, is very strange and different. The Alter Rebbe brings a concept of Vechinu, a posuk. The Rambam doesn't bring that. And then we have the question of Matzah Shabbos, which is really okay. So I want to just suggest that the organization of the Rambam is based on his first halacha, Perek Lamed Halachal, and that is Ezehu Kovod. You know what the definition of Kovod is? To get yourself into a state of mind, the Rambam says, Miyachel lahakbolas pnei Shabbos kemoishu yetzel akras hamelech. That's it. That's Ezehu Kovod. Now, everything else, if you notice, is mi Kovod HaShabbos. Chela is up out of Kovod HaShabbos. They're all intended for one thing, to create an atmosphere of miyachel lahakbolas pnei Shabbos yetzel akras hamelech. That's it. That's the definition of Shabbos. Everything that follows is like branches of the tree. So, just to answer one of the biggest questions, that's why, according to the Rambam, he right away throws in Malav Malka, Levoyas HaMelech, where he talks about Kovod Shabbos. Why? Because if I'm not Malav the Malka, that means I didn't hear there's a Melech here. That means I never was Mekayim. I never was Mekayim the Miyachel Agbolos Pnei Shabbos K'may Sheyetzel Akras HaMelech. Because if I deher Melech, I have to be Malav the Melech. So until you're not Malav the Melech, you felt in Kovod Shabbos. That's the word Kedei Lechabdem Miknisasim Yitzirasa. That's why he has to put it in right away. He can't wait till later. It's not a dinim alav malka separate than the actual Kovod Shabbos. The state and them was with the help. I'm as yaitzel akras hamelech. You can't be yaitzel akras hamelech if you're not malav with that melech. And that's all the different things that is Zehu Kvoidoi, it's the Kvod Shabbos. That's Kvod Shabbos. The different ways of teaching it. It's Kvod Shabbos, Kvod Shabbos Baruch. The Chavos Yair asked the question: how could you allow a person who's a choshev person to be mevaz himself and do things? The answer that anatla fi kvedes, the global kved abriya shadei Chavos Yair. Not a psasa. The answer is that's Kovod HaMelech. That's not the gay. There's no such thing. There's no such thing as your Kovod, the Makom Kvod of the Eibush, the Kovod of the Makom Kovod of the Melech. And therefore the Rambam doesn't mention about Mishi Eshla Avadim, because the whole, what difference does it make if you have Avadim? The Avadim are not going to breathe. You're not going to be involved in the Kovod. You're not doing anything Kovodik by sending your Avadim. The Chiddush is that an Adam Choshev gives up his Kovod for that. That's a Chiddush. So that there are a lot of things that the Rambam leaves out that are talked about in the Pesach, is because the Rambam is looking at it as a whole different opinion. He covered HaMelech. And that's miyachel agbolos b'nei Shabbos k'mei she'etzel l'kras HaMelech. And everything. That's why that's Eza who covered. Everything else is the branches of it. Now that's why he brings the dinner covered before the dinner eating. Because it's not about eating. It's not about doing things. It's about a state of being. Eating is enjoying, is having a personal a tainig of it. That's the details of how you enjoy Shabbos. This is how you begin Shabbos. This is the whole Shabbos. That's why he begins with begodim, because that's more negated to how you present yourself, how you stand in front of a king. He brings machalot to set up a table and all that, because that's also important. And then he doesn't bring the v'cheichinu, because that's not what it's about. It's about, as we said, the Kabbalah Samelech and to meet the king. And that's why the Rambam asks, because the Rambam has to say this, because you're giving away your covet for the Kovod HaMelech. So you think, I should get on. In other words, if it's your opinion of doing for yourself or for you to have a covet of Shabbos, one thing, they'll do it. The Chiddush the Rambam is that despite that I already showed my covet, no, I'm marbe, because you have to create your maimed matzif to be standing yetzel me'achel akbolos ne'Shabbos k'mei yetzel l'kras hamelech. You have to be in a frame of mind that's kol hamarb. There's a kol hamarb in that. That in any aspect that brings that out. And that's why he stresses so much going out into the street and buying, because it's not covered to do. You can think you can give up your own covet privately, but berabim, yeah, it's also negated. Berabim. And all these things fit in the way the Rambam's idea of setting yourself up in a way that you're presenting yourself, you're deharing the inyan of Kovod HaShabbos. I wanted to go back. We have a few seconds and talk about how the Rambam turned the fish into meat. But this is a pilpul. Yishalmi Tainis, Perek Dal Halacha Hey says, there are 700 types of kosher fish. When the Yidden went to Bavel, when he came back, they all came back with them except for one fish. It's called shivuta. So the Korban Eidah says, well, according to Amshad, because the taste of its mayach, its brain, is like that of a chazir. Therefore, it didn't fit to come back. That does not belong in Eretz Yisrael. So the Rambam perhaps thought that it's not logical that Rava should be makbid on something that's not really Elias and Eretz HaKadosh because it has a taste of a chazir. It should be that is part of its Shabbos. So so he stresses that's why he turns it into that it must have been a piece of meat that they called shivuta. Now, the Bnei Moshe says there that the shivuta is that which the Gemara mentions kulias is panim, and Rashi says dag she'oichelais mas molchay de'at chag b'cham de'adoch b'cham. So you eat it by salting it and then washing it off with rinsing it off. And he says that that's the Gemar Malach and that's the Bishul, the Hadoch. So could be that the Rambam took both of these things out of the word Malach Shivuta. The reason he calls it Shivuta, because by Shivuta, the salting and rinsing is its Bishul. And therefore he used the word Shivuta that has a reference to a fish. But it couldn't be a fish because it's Daimel Chazir. So the Rambam didn't want it to be a Daimel that didn't believe that Rava was that's what he did. So therefore he says that from this Gemara he learns that it was Sai Mivashal, because the Gemara Bishula is through salting of Shivuta. But it can't be shivuta, so therefore he says that he was probably molech a piece of meat. It's a pilpul, and I don't know that that's pshat, but I thought it was cute, and therefore I'm putting it in. Okay. Anyway, the bottom line is that the Rambam's approach to Kovod Shabbos is a unique approach, and that the whole word is putting yourself in a frame of mind of realizing he ate the Kras HaMelech, and that's why he brings the minig to go out the Kras HaMelech and say, boy, Neitzah. And they'd say that they used to do that. Anyway, Atzlocha Rabbah, and everybody should help that it should be Meiredik Shabbos, all the good things. We should have all the Shabbos for this week. And we say to the Gula Mita Shleim, Zay Gesund Stark, Atzlocha Rabbah.